Okay, we're back. Hi, everybody. This is 6 years later, a chat about the leftovers. I am Ethan, middle-aged American guy, and I got a younger gentleman from the UK named Benji. Is that Benji?
Howdy. Howdy.
And he's never seen the show. I've seen the show. We've done a couple episodes. There was lots of editing in the last episode, so we plan to get better with that as we go. So if you're still here, definitely appreciate it. Today we're going to do episode 3, Two Boats and a Helicopter, directed by Keith Gordon, but written by Damon Lindelof and Jacqueline Hoyt. Just a note, Keith Gordon definitely pops out in my brain. He was in a couple of my favorite movies in the 80s. He was in The Legend of Billie Jean. He was in Christine and a bunch of others. Oh, he was in The Player, but one of my favorite movies of all time is The Legend of Billie Jean. It's an 80s cheesy movie. Maybe after the leftovers, I can make Benji watch some of these and get his opinion on those. Benji, did you like the episode? How did you like it?
This was, it was one of my favorites so far, which isn't saying a lot. We're only 3 episodes in, but of the 3 I watched, it was definitely above 2, probably on a par with 1. In a way, for me, it was a little bit of a callback to Lindelof's days on Lost, where he would have very, very character-driven episodes, and you would see flashbacks, and you would see that character on the island, and then you would see flashbacks again, and the whole episode was focused around that character and their development, often. So this was a little bit different, obviously, but it had some similar ideas. It had a couple of flashbacks, if I recall, and it was definitely centered around one character, in this case, Matt, who. This is the first chance we really had to explore his character and take a look at his motivations and the depth to him and his kind of connection to this world. So I loved it for that reason, and I also loved it for it's just brilliant acting from Christopher Eccleston, who I, like many of you, know as Doctor Who. And this performance for me was so kind of far out from that blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm sure Ethan agrees with me there.
Yeah, it's really, when you see that Christopher Eccleston signs up at this point in his career for something like this, you know that they're waiting to use him for something. He's not going to sign up for something like this unless they know that there's some meat somewhere coming along. And there definitely is here, and, this episode I feel like is a real evolutionary step in the show. Because I remember still watching it the first time, and you're like, wow, at the end of it, you really... these end of episode gut punches that happened at the end of the first one with the They're Not Our Dogs, you really get one here. Kind of a step up in the game for the show. We get Reverend Matt giving a sermon about his experiences as a child. Well, he's telling the story as a boy.
Right, and it took me a couple of rewinds to get that. I didn't understand what was going on the first time, so I played it back. And on second viewing, I put it together in my head. He was talking about himself. I assume it was himself, right?
But he's mixing it into the sermon where he's using the name for this girl that really has cancer, I believe, or there's something wrong with her name, Emily. But yeah, I believe he's totally talking about himself. And during his sermon, you can see he's got almost nobody left in the congregation. And in the middle of collecting the money for the little girl, a man comes in and beats him up for one of his flyers about the man's loved one who departed. Because what he does as a reminder is because he wants to prove it's not the Rapture, so he makes up flyers of people who departed and the bad things they've done. And this doesn't sit well with people. He's always showing up with bruises. And all the time that this is happening, they're intercutting it with the GR stalking outside of his church. Credits. Now, after our discussion last week, did you look a little bit more at the credits this week?
I noticed the policeman in the uniform. I noticed the baby, I believe it was the same-sex couple you mentioned last week. I believe I clocked that one as well. I think there's a few more. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, it definitely made a lot more sense to me this time around.
Yeah, and just keep watching. There's new stuff that pops up all the time.
Right.
So, anything else to say about the intro?
No, nothing from me.
Matt is talking to the police at the hospital because he got beat up for his newsletter. Then they are trying to get him to press charges on the man who beat him up looks like Kevin comes in and him and Matt talk about like a relationship that Matt had with Kevin's father. And I guess he goes to leave. He goes down the elevator with a clown, right? And he goes to check on Emily.
Yeah, yep.
And Emily is gone. And they say Emily was in a coma. The orderly says she woke up and is gone. Like she woke up and left is what it made it sound like, right?
Yeah, but Matt it kind of misinterprets it and thinks it was a recent event because he goes suddenly, "Hey, my congregation, we just prayed for her. She up and left. Wow, what a miracle." At least that's what he's insinuating. And then the orderly says, "No, it was last night, mate. Last night." And he just kind of walks out a little dejected,
It's not going his way, right? Matt's at home. The bank is trying to call him. He's putting his church together. On a sign behind him, I noticed, and these are the kind of things I get from listening to so many podcasts, he's putting up chapter Bible verses, right?
Yeah, I saw. I didn't do the due diligence of checking out and reading them. I think that's where you're going.
Well, I did a little, but not too many. And that comes from, and I'm not well versed in this stuff at all, Theologians 5:18. The first one is Epiphany 5:18.
Ephesians? Is that
what?
Pronounced Ephesians?
So I don't know.
It could be any of the above.
Right. So, and I'm not going to do all these, but the first one says, appreciate the blessings that you have right now. I'm not going to get too much into the Bible talk because I'm not that well versed. All this information I've gleaned from other sources is that we're going to see strong resemblances in this episode to Matt being Job, in the book of Job.
That's
right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I do have the story correct that he basically is...
Job's a pretty well, he's done well for himself. He's built up a sizable amount of land. He's got his family. He's got his home. Everything seems to be going well for him in the world. And then he gets brought down to size for no other reason than that the devil wants to test him. And God says, okay, test him. He's not going to break. So the devil tests him and he takes away his land. One by one, he takes away his land, then he takes away his home, even takes away his family. And Job's left, a poor man. He's got nothing to his name. He's physically ill. He has scars, whatever, all over his body. Even his friends are telling him, look, man, God's not coming to help you out. You're on your own here. And he's saying, no, I'm not, and he remains strong in his faith throughout that. And ultimately, as a result, he is blessed and regains land, home to an even greater extent than what he had before. So that's kind of Job summed up. I hope I didn't miss anything, but I'll keep that in mind when we're discussing the rest of this because I didn't see that at first.
And I'm only going to read one more simply because Epiphany.
And it's interesting. I should note, that the whole story of Job is a story about loss. So it makes a lot of sense for it to be directly related to the themes of this show. It's about a man who loses everything, and where does he go from there, and his kind of redemption from that.
See, I knew I picked the right person to talk about the show with. I knew that was going to happen. I looked up all the other ones. There was too much going on, but I did read one, the last one, Epiphany 3:7-6. And I want to, it's the Epiphany prayer, and it's inspired by Micah, and I don't know who that was in the Bible, but it's a nice name. And it says, Love divine, we praise you for the beauty of this new day. Eleusis rise with the song of the morning birds. Incline your ears to our prayers, of whose name we, O merciful God, as we bear them up in tenderness. Elijah, come in, have some wine, and we'll move on from this. But it's just another way of saying everything in one of these shows means something. I'm sure each one of those verses has a direct meaning, as does the book of Job to this story in particular.
And again, apologies if we butchered any of those pronunciations and names.
I've always remembered this. A man comes in and has Matt secretly baptize his new baby behind his wife's back. And the man with the baby gives Matt info on a departure who did bad things to help him out in his crusade. Yeah. My question to you is, in the grand scheme, in this new world where people just disappear, how big a violation is this to this man's wife?
I hadn't really considered it in that particular light. Violation by, you mean, disrespect, going against her wishes, going behind her back. Is that what you mean by
Yeah.
violation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's certainly not on the same level as, cheating, adultery. He's doing something that's supposedly a good thing, and he's baptizing his son. Even though it's behind her back, it's still, at the end of the day, he's acting out of good intention. So I don't know how harshly you can judge him for that.
And it all goes on how strongly you believe or don't believe in what you believe in or not believe in, right?
Yeah, and I mean, he's not really committed enough to, because obviously Matt invites him to bring his family to the service, and he's not willing to go that far. But he does. It's kind of like, to me, it's like a insurance, right? He's like, I got to do it just in case, So I'm going to go get this baby baptized, but I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, and I'm not really going to commit to church. It's just, I might as well get him baptized because
I think the church thing was like, I'm not going to bring this up to her. If I bring that up to her, she's going to find out, and she's going to ask why I was there and all that kind of stuff. Did you have anything else to say about that guy?
Yeah, well, the obvious thing for me was that he was willing to give information to Matt. And so far, all we've seen are people who disagree with Matt, and with the exception of Nora, who hooks him, people seem pretty antagonistic towards him and his purpose. But this lets us know that, literally behind closed doors, there are people that agree with what he's doing to an extent. And so he's not quite as alone in his cause as we think at the beginning.
But yeah, let's be clear. Nora is not for his cause.
No, she's not. But she's the only person we see that doesn't react in a kind of aggressive way to him.
All right, so Matt takes this guy's information, and why does he go to the casino? Because the man gambled all his money, I guess.
Yeah.
So Matt,
which then leads us to the whole
casino
gambling casino.
But also at the casino, he basically gives Matt gives his entire mission a narrative when he talks to this casino manager, right? So and the guy says, the casino manager says, I can see why you get hit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But then he also does give him the information, right?
Well, he does give him the information, and then, but this gentleman didn't lose anyone that did something bad. He only sees the part where he lost someone who was a 9-year-old niece. And so if someone came up to him, in his mind, if the departure was a rapture, she was a kind soul that got taken.
Yeah.
But if he came and said, well, your niece was selling drugs, and obviously this wasn't the rapture because she was selling drugs, and people that sell drugs don't get raptured. Mm-hmm. So he sees that and says, okay, well, maybe I understand why people punch you in the face. So he sees birds land on the roulette wheel.
Yeah, he sees birds before that when he's cleaning the chapel, and he brushes them off the doorstep. So I think that's the first sign we see of the birds, and then they follow him around, and we see them again at the casino table.
Totally. But then he leaves. He sees the birds on the roulette wheel. He tries to donate things to the GR following him. It's his way of helping them, right? And then he finally
also has a little dialogue with them where he tells them, guys, give it up. You're not gonna get me now. I've made it this far. I don't know if that suggests they were trying to recruit him at one point.
Well, I think knowing what we know at the end, there's all this intimidation happening.
Right.
It's kind of pressure. They know where he is. They know where he is.
So
for the bank.
So the GR, maybe not every stakeout they do is for the purpose of recruiting.
Yeah, this is kind of recruiting. They know they're going after his church, and they know that his church is on the chopping block. And I think maybe these particular ones don't know. Is it the blonde with the glasses?
Yeah, she's in there.
Yeah. And they don't. They probably don't know. They were probably just given orders from Patty to go do it. You know what I mean? But then he finally has to have a talk to the bank. Talk to the bank, right? Talks to the gentleman at the bank. There's been an offer on the church. They say he could stay unless someone made an offer. Someone made an offer on the church. We don't know who it is yet. And he's got to bring in $135,000 by tomorrow in cash to save the church. So we go and we find out. I don't know if this is the first time we saw Matt and Nora together before, but this is the first time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw them in episode 2, I believe, hugging briefly on the street, but this is the first time we see them talk to each other. And
then we find out that they're brother and sister.
Yeah, and that was a real moment. When I was watching it, I was under the assumption they were just, some weird coincidence. They happened to be close friends. And I had no idea how that had lined up, but I believed that was the way it was. So when he asks her for the money, in my mind, I was like, no, it's going to be awkward. He's asking for a friend. He's asking a friend for a lot of money from, a very personal pain point, which is her benefit money from the departure. And it's just the whole vibe. I was like, what are you doing, Matt? What are you doing? And then when it's revealed that they're family, it doesn't change the fact that he's still asking her for a large amount of money in, a pretty direct way. But for me, it suddenly eased all that tension because I was like in my mind, well, they're family and this is what family do. It completely switched on its head the dynamic of that scene and the way I was viewing their relationship. It was probably a different experience for you because you already knew that. But for me, it was one of those moments where you watch it and you think, there you go. So that's why. That's why.
Yeah, and sometimes you forget what it's like the first time you watch it, and you know that they're brother and sister, and they tell you pretty quickly. And it kind of seems like one of these things that it was like a decision that was made between the first episode and the second episode, between the first episode and when they wrote the rest of the season. It could be totally wrong. Their parents, we know from, well, we'll find that out later. So do we start to think that, her parents also died in a fire?
Yeah, they mention something along those lines. It's not quite clear at the time though.
Right. And, he specifically asks her not just for money she has, but her benefit departure money.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a kind of a shitty thing. Mm-hmm. And she basically said, yeah, I'll give you the money if you stop making your paper.
Yeah. Which is, like you were saying before, even though they're brother and sister, she isn't in support of his paper, clearly, from this.
Right.
And I don't know so much whether she is not in support of his paper, which it may well be, or if it's more she's concerned about what it's doing to him and his welfare and the fact that he needs to let it go and move on, and whether that's what she's the most concerned about, or if it's a combination of both, perhaps.
And his awesome brotherly reaction, his awesome reaction to this is to reveal the fact that her husband was cheating on her.
Yeah, nice one, man.
Because, and I'm being completely sarcastic, this is how to get what you want. This is the right move for her to say, okay, I'll give you all the money that you want.
Yeah, now that I know my husband was cheating, I no longer want the money that was left to me when he departed. Yeah, I don't know what was going through his mind there. He's obviously a guy with not a lot of allies, so it seems pretty stupid to push away the ones he does have.
Yeah, and he's destroying, people's sense of hope. If her husband wasn't raptured, does that mean truly good people weren't raptured either? Like, it's very, I think it's done a little bit out of anger. I think he's been sitting on it for a while. And, it didn't end well for both of them, did it? No.
And that makes me wonder. Obviously, Matt believes his whole purpose is to persuade people that it's not the rapture, this event. But when I was watching it, I was examining the discussions and the stuff on TV and everything that was coming out of everyone else's mouth, and it really didn't sound to me like it didn't sound to me like everybody was believing it was the rapture anyway. You know, you have all these people on TV discussing the science behind it, and a lot of people saying they have no idea, but most people saying they have no idea. You have a few people clearly claiming it's a religious occurrence, but from my point of view, it seemed like the vast majority of the population were pretty much either completely in the dark on this, or believing it could be explained by science, or it seemed at the very least that the verdict was still very much out, and not a lot of people actually do think it's the rapture. So I don't know how many people he believes he's arguing with at this point when he's trying to persuade people it's not the rapture, because I think that job's pretty much done for most of the population. So I don't quite get why that's not occurring to him. You know, what he doesn't need to persuade everyone it's not the rapture.
When I talk about this ripple effect through the whole show, what happens to the world of religion when this happens in general? I mean, I think it explodes more than ever when this happens. So, you know, like I said, it's a microcosm. There's tons of people. There's hundreds of millions of people that are religious, and that this would just fuel that fire more than anything. And that's why the show is called The Leftovers, because most people kind of think it was a rapture type event. And what do you have? You have the people that were not taken. This is not about the people that were taken. It's the people that are left over.
Well, maybe. But it seemed to me like that may be the case in the religious world as a whole and outside of this town or city, whatever it is. But the people that he's arguing on a day-to-day basis, you know, he's encountering people such as Kevin, the town population, who we've begun to get an appreciation for who they are and the way they think. And from what I've seen, there aren't a lot of people that are going around saying with certainty this was the rapture.
Yeah, he is arguing with those people, and don't get me wrong, religion's taking a big hit the other way as well. I mean, his church is empty. But who knows if that is people have lost faith, or that their preacher has gone crazy with this one thing, which I think is a thing that's happened.
I guess the main point I'm getting at is the world is clearly not quite as clear-cut and divided as his sense of purpose makes it out to be. You know, he makes it sound like it's him versus the world, and in reality it's probably him versus one section of the world, where there's another section of the world that's completely out of the debate, and another one that's on the other side, one that's maybe on his side. And you know, it's not the black and white fight that he is presenting it as. Yeah,
it's almost like politics, right? You just drive to politics. Like, some people are really in it, some people are not in it at all.
Right.
Lots of gray area, and lots of people totally discard it and don't deal with it at all.
That's a pretty good comparison.
So Matt comes home. There's a lot more world building. Did you pay attention at all to what was on the TV when he came home? What his?
I should have learned better by now, but I don't. It may ring a bell when you tell me, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
It looks like it was an ad or a news story about people.
Yeah, I did.
Life-size dolls.
I did get it. Loved ones, right?
Yeah, Loved One dolls.
Mm-hmm.
That'll come up later. And there's an argument with Mary's nurse about money. And Mary is played by Janelle Maloney from The West Wing. Pretty popular. Another popular actress that they've seemingly given a part to where they don't talk. Mary's alive, but is in a completely vegetative state. Matt does take care of her with love and care and puts her to bed, gives her a bath. And
it's nice to see. It's nice to see that side of him, because all we've seen so far is his, you know, in a word, destructive nature. Even though it isn't entirely like that. It's, you know, it's obviously not as clear cut as that. But his paper is about tearing people down, whereas right here he's doing the opposite. And you know, it's nice to see that his character does have that in him, and it really makes you appreciate him a lot more.
But it's also nice to see, this is kind of like where we see a lot of his drive comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, he's got, you know, this person to take care of. and something's happened to her, and part of it is too she didn't get departed as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a lot going on. So Matt and Mary go to bed, and he sees another sign from God. He gets his caretaker back and promises to pay her. She's working off a real sympathy for Mary's situation, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Kevin Sr.'s old house, which is Kevin Jr.'s house now.
Yeah.
He sneaks in the backyard, digs up a jar there left in secret by Kevin Sr. Lori is there. They agree not to mention each other and pretend they weren't there. And Matt takes the money from the jar wrapped in his first flyer, gets a note from Kevin Sr. that he deserves it. And, they had a really weird, relationship going on, and we don't know what the nature of it is yet.
No. And I'm interested to see what the deal is with the judge, right? That's what the flyer was of. It was of a judge. So I have no idea what that means right now. I assume it'll be explored.
And I think it's actually going to get explored, I think, in this episode.
Okay.
And there are some signs there later. What do you think about Lori being there?
Yeah, it threw me, because I thought I recognized it as Kevin's house, and then when I saw her in the back, I was like, did he go to the GR house, or this is Kevin's house, right? And then they speak, and you start to realize, okay, maybe Laurie's not as detached as she tries to give off. That's the only reason. Well, that's one of the only reasons I can see for her being there. Apart from, just being a general creepy presence. It's
it's weird because she during the day she's being a Jedi master of the GR to Meg, right? And telling her to let things go, but at night she does this. So
yeah, it's like Luke goes to sleep and Yoda pulls out that red lightsaber.
So Matt gets another sign, more birds.
Yeah, and the birds are on top of the traffic lights, correct?
Right. So he goes to the roulette wheel, starts winning, and wins big, and everyone is amazed, and the sketchy couple is hanging out the whole time.
Yeah.
How'd you feel watching this just one part with him starting to win and the sketchy couple?
I kind of saw what was coming with the sketchy couple, given that, well, it's a sketchy couple watching somebody make 160 grand right next to them and by himself. So that part was not quite a surprise. What was a surprise to me was that he did win the money, because I don't believe gambling is a major, it's not a major pillar of Christianity. Gambling is not, it's not generally a practice that your reverends are supposed to be indulging in, but he does indulge in it and he wins big. So I'm not quite sure what the message is there in terms of the religious side of things. I don't know if that even comes into play here. He's just a guy trying to make money, but it's great acting throughout the whole scene. Matt's face watching the never indulged in the practice of gambling myself before, so I don't know what it's called, but when the ball's spinning around and landing in the red or the green slot,
roulette.
Such a tense roulette. Yeah, I should have got that one. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
When it's the roulette and it's landing on either one, such tension, man. I genuinely had no idea where that was going to go. So there was one piece of symbolism I noticed that I hope is intentional, because it was a pretty cool thing to pick up on, and it was that when he spots the bird on the traffic light, there's a pretty clear shot that stuck in my head of the bird perched on top of the traffic light as it's on red. And before that, we've seen the bird on the casino table. Now we're seeing the bird on the traffic light. Specifically, we linger on it on the red. And obviously, as you know, when he goes and gambles, he puts his money on the red every single time, and he wins every single time. So whether it's an unconscious decision or a conscious decision, because he's seen that bird and he's seen it on the red, and he's put it together in his mind that that's what he's meant to do, or not, it was a pretty cool piece of symbolism that I thought would be remiss not to mention.
The only thing I'm thinking, he gets this big smile on his face, he gets his money, and the whole time I'm thinking, and I was just as tense as I was the first time I saw this, why is there no security guard walking him to his car? That's a service I'm sure they would provide for him, or to bring the car around. But this had to happen for the confrontation to take place with the scuzzy couple, Colin, Donnie, and Crystal, and he chases. He won't. He's done so much to get this money. He won't let this happen.
Yeah.
And he gets blood on his hands. He either kills this guy or beats him to within an inch of his life.
Savage, what he does. And he gets back in the car and he seems, I don't know what exactly the emotion is, but it's definitely not complete regret. He seems pretty happy about one thing or another.
Well, it's undercut with this really happy poppy 70s Love Will Keep Us Together by the Captain and T-Mill song. He's whistling. He gets to go back and pay the money to the can. He gets to, I don't know if he does it now. I don't think he does. But his money, he gets to pay the nurse, and he gets to get his church back.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting point, I may be completely off the mark here, I don't think I am, is when Tommy in episode 2 shoots the guy, and then obviously, so he has a violent moment, and then after that, he gets in a car, and he yells. And we see a pretty similar thing happen here. Or maybe that's just something people do after they do something violent, is they go yell in their car.
It's an I'm going to go out on a limb and saying it's an aggro expression of adrenaline after something like that happens. Definitely. Especially from people that you see soft-spoken people that normally don't do this. So he pays back money. He takes down a street sign for the judge.
Yeah, and I was a little bit confused about that.
Here's where I'm confused, because it is the judge that hit their car, but we'll get to that. He takes down the sign of the judge and he puts it in the back of his car, and he has a lot of them. On his way back to the bank, feeling good, he just has to stop to help some GR who are getting hit with rocks. And as no good deed goes unpunished, especially in the leftovers, he gets whacked in the face with a rock. Fade to black.
And it's even worse when you look at that moment from the perspective of knowing what happens at the end of this episode, and that it all comes about as a result of him trying to help those people. It's definitely a frustrating thing.
It looks like we're in the middle of dream time. He has a vision. He has a dream where his church is full. He sees himself as a boy, I think, and he sees himself as a man, but in a boy position, being diagnosed with cancer, and the fire that killed his parents. And it looks like he's holding a little girl's hand, and we now think that it's Nora's hand. Then a vision of Mary's accident at the exact time of the departure. I think it's the judge's car.
Yeah, and I didn't get that from it, so either I wasn't quite paying attention to it, or maybe it comes out later.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if that comes out later. That's a spoiler. But, it makes sense. The judge was departed. The judge was a bad person. There was no one to sue or blame for Mary's accident.
Right.
He sees Mary had an accident. And I think the first flyer that he saw in the jar that Kevin Sr. left for him was for that judge.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, that he would also take the signs down, the judge's signs down in the street named after him.
Yeah.
The more visions of him, Mary and him making love, more visions of Mary making love, and he turns into Lori, but she turns into Lori, and that makes no sense to me. And his hands are on fire.
Yeah.
And I believe you hear a child's voice say, "Why won't anybody tell me anything?" I would guess that is Nora's voice about the parents burning. And then his whole body is on fire, and then he wakes up in a hospital. Any thoughts on all those visions and all those dreams?
It was a weird dream. I'm never that good at deciphering these dreams. I don't know if anyone is, whether that's just me or not. I get the sense it's purposely a little bit hard to read, especially the moment with Laurie. I had no idea why, like you said, I didn't know why that was in there.
And it could just be recency. He just saw her, so his mind picked.
Right,
You know
and
what I mean?
that's something that does happen in dreams. Not that specific moment, but that kind of thing where people you've seen recently, they do crop up in your dreams.
Okay, so he wakes up at 4:30, so he's got plenty of time just to get to the bank and pay. The money is still there. Everything's going great. He gets there. He goes to pay. Oh, no, it's actually 3 days later. He's way too late to the church. It's been sold. He finds out this church has been sold to the guilty remnant. Matt returns to see the church being taken over by Patty and the GR. A nightmare for him come true.
Yeah.
End of episode.
There's a little stare down at the end between him and Patty, which definitely suggested a rivalry to me. Whether they've had a past, we'll see.
And I mean, what do you think is next for Matt?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, he's lost his church. On the other hand, he now has 160 grand that he can keep. He doesn't need to use that to pay off the church anymore. So I don't know how much money matters to a guy like Matt, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty useful for helping maintain the continued care of his wife, and all his home, car. It will keep him covered while he figures out his next step. But I don't know if the money in itself is going to be enough. I highly doubt it, and it's going to be pretty hard, if not impossible, for him to get that church back. Now we've seen how kind of clinically effective the GR can be when they put their mind to something. And it was, so that's what I was talking about before when I was saying how it's really frustrating how he loses this church as a result. Yeah, to be fair, an indirect result, but still a result of him trying to help a couple members of the GR. And it really makes me think, he's going out trying to help them, and this is what they do to him in return. And it's another little thing that gets added to the pile of simmering resentment towards the GR. And so, I'm starting to get pretty annoyed at these people.
Oh, you are, huh? Yeah.
It doesn't help that they seem to be, you always get these people in real life and in films and TV that seem to have this cold, clinical, brutal effectiveness where everything seems to line up for them. But then the guys that we're rooting for, like Matt, and sometimes ourselves, it just doesn't seem to go that way. And it seems like the opposite, and everything that could, Murphy's Law, everything that could go wrong does. And so I was surprised that Matt made it through with the money, that he kept hold of the money, because in my mind there was no way he was going to keep that money. So I was celebrating when he did, but I still, I was wondering, well, where's it going to go from here? And then, of course, well, you've got the money, but you can't use it. And it's just, it's a moment where it's so frustrating. It really got me a little bit.
It's the first time it feels like there was an emotional punch for the first time since the end of the first episode, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is considered a new direction for them, really, with the single focus episode. I really liked it. I'm glad we talked about it today. And, I hope you'll come back and we'll do another one real soon.
Yeah, and I mean, one final comment. We talked about Job at the beginning of this podcast. We didn't come back to it much yet, apart from saying when he got the money, that's, he got some money. But a point here is that, okay, he lost the church, but what you've got to remember about Job is that he lost his homes, and then only from losing it was he able to kind of rise up out of that and rebuild himself. So I'm personally hoping that's what Matt is able to do with this, and not linger on and carry on fighting to get this church back, which is quite clearly seems to be a losing battle for him, but take this as an opportunity to go in a new direction, to a hopefully more emotionally and personally profitable path for him.
Right on. That's a great point. It's really a step up in the episodes, I think, even though they've been good so far. And I can't wait to talk about another one with you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, see you later.
All right.